She sat at the wrong table on a blind date, only to meet a billionaire and his son. He thought it was fate, she thought it was a mistake. Bile. But neither of them knew the truth. She was being tested, and didn't even know it. What happens when love begins with a lie? We dive into this unforgettable journey. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. The coffee machine hissed behind her like it was mocking her exhaustion. Lily Thompson wiped her hands on her apron and slid the last bill of the day into the register at Maple Street Diner. Her legs ached from the double shift, her fingers smelled faintly of ketchup and coffee, and her eyes burned from the 4 hours of night classes she'd squeezed in the night before. She had exactly $42.00 left in her wallet, and an art supply list. As she stepped into the cramped staff room to change, her roommate Kara's text popped up. Please say yes. I'll owe you forever." Another ping followed. "It's just dinner. You don't even have to like him. Just be polite." Lily groaned, leaning her head against the dented locker door. Kara had been talking about this blind date for weeks. Her work schedule had shifted last minute, and now Lily was the only person available to take her place. It was just one evening, a couple hours, probably boring conversation, maybe a free salad. What was the worst that could happen? 20 minutes later, she stood outside the glass doors of Delmere, one of the city's fanciest restaurants, feeling like a fraud. Her navy blue dress was second-hand, the zippers stuck halfway up, and her scuffed ballet flats had seen better years. She pulled her worn beige coat tighter around herself and exhaled into the... Inside, low golden lights made the white tablecloths shimmer, and soft classical music drifted through the air. The kind of place that served bread on tiny plates and water in glasses heavier than bricks. Lily felt the stares before she even crossed the foyer. The hostess glanced up from her tablet with polite disinterest. "Hi," Lily began, smoothing down the front of her dress. "I think I'm meeting someone? A blind date?" My roommate set it up. She hesitated. "I'm not sure of the name." The hostess barely blinked. One moment, a finger scrolled down the screen. A slight pause, then a nod. "Yes, right this way." Lily blinked in surprise. That was easy. She followed the hostess past flickering candles and couples lost in hushed conversation. Her heels clicked against the marble, echoing louder than they should have. Every step made her feel more like an imposter. They neared a window table, tucked into a quiet corner. The hostess gestured lightly. The man who stood was tall, broad-shouldered, his dark sweater simple but perfectly cut. His eyes were a shade of storm gray, intense yet calm. But what caught Lily off guard was the boy sitting beside him, a child no older than 8, coloring intently on a menu with a red crayon. Lily froze for half a second. The man gave her a warm, polite smile. "Hi there, you must be Billy," she said quickly, trying not to sound breathless. "I hope I'm not too late." "At all," the man said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat." She sat down carefully, feeling the chair curve gently under her. Her eyes flicked to the boy, who looked up and gave a small, shy, "Hi." She smiled, grateful for something easy. "Hi there, is that a T-Rex?" The boy grinned. "Nope, Spinosaurus, bigger than a T-Rex, and it had a sail on its back. See?" He held up the drawing, proud. The creature had a row of jagged lines along its back and a smile that seemed almost too cheerful for a predator. Lee leaned in. "That's incredible. You drew this?" The boy nodded proudly. "I'm Evan." "Well, Professor Evan," she said with a wink, "you've got some serious talent." Lucas Hale sat silently, watching the exchange. He hadn't expected this. Certainly not the way she smiled first at his son, or how she leaned forward, genuinely interested. She didn't glance at her phone. She didn't seem disappointed. She didn't even ask why there was a kid at the table. Lucas was used to calculating people within moments. In his world, dinner came with agendas, conversations hid motives, and kindness was currency. But Lily didn't look at him like he was a number on a screen. She looked at Evan like he mattered. That was all Lucas had wanted tonight. A woman to treat his son like a person. Lily picked up her menu, her fingers curling slightly at the edges as she scanned the items. "This place is fancier than I expected." Lucas chuckled, a soft rumble in his throat. "Bit much for a first date, isn't it?" "I was told it'd be low-key," she said, her smile tilting. She laughed, not realizing they were both speaking about different setups. Lucas tilted his glass of water to his lips, covering a faint smirk. This was already not what he had planned. Evan suddenly piped up. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I love dinosaurs," Lily replied without missing a beat. "Especially the flying ones." Evan offered. "That one?" Lucas watched his son light up. Evan had barely said 2 words to anyone outside of school or home in weeks. And here he was, chatting up a stranger like they were old friends. Lily set her menu down and turned to Lucas. "And what about you? What do you do?" Lucas hesitated. This was the moment most women leaned in closer, asking about his business, his holdings, or his penthouse view. But Lily's tone was different, gentle, curious, not fishing. "Finance," he said flatly. "Mostly numbers and meetings, nothing exciting." "Must be hard," she said thoughtfully, "balancing work and being a dad." Lucas blinked. Not, "What do you drive?" Not, "How much do you make?" Just, "Is it hard?" "Sometimes," he admitted. The waiter arrived with a pitcher of water and menus. Lily thanked him softly and turned back to Evan. "Professor, what's your favorite dinosaur of all time?" Evan didn't hesitate. "Therizinosaurus. It had claws this long." He held his arms wide. "And it was a herbivore, which—" "Eat plants," Lily said, nodding. "Smart and sharp. Good combo." Lucas felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. She wasn't just kind, she was present. And she wasn't performing, she was just real. He studied her posture. There was something resilient in the way she sat, like she carried weight on her shoulders but had learned to stand tall anyway. Her smile was quiet, not showy. Her eyes kept drifting toward Evan, genuinely interested. Lily turned her attention back to the menu. "What do you recommend?" Lucas opened his mouth, then paused. He wasn't sure what to say. Recommend the sea bass and reveal he'd been here dozens of times? Or pretend this was new to him too? Evan chimed in. "Dad likes the pasta with the mushrooms, but only because the chef hides the green stuff." "Oh," Lily said, eyes wide. "So you're a veggie dodger." Lucas grinned. "I plead the fifth." The waiter returned to take their order. Lily chose the most affordable pasta, her fingers brushing the side of her purse as if mentally calculating her budget. Lucas noticed but said nothing. This night wasn't about money, it was about moments, and for the first time in a long time, he wanted to stop measuring everything. Lily leaned forward again. "So, Evan, do you draw a lot?" "Time," he said proudly. "Dinosaurs, dragons, and sometimes my dad." "Can I see one of those?" Aragon paused, then nodded. "Maybe next time." Lucas smiled. Next time, the words echoed in his mind, warm and unspoken. He hadn't even finished the appetizer, and already, something about Lily felt dangerously close. To home. Or reappeared with a basket of warm bread and a trio of tiny dishes, one with olive oil, one with butter curls, and another with something green Lily couldn't quite identify. As he set it down and quietly excused himself, Evan leaned toward the basket like a knight awaiting orders. "Bread," he declared solemnly, "is my favorite appetizer." Lily grinned. "Ah, the sacred bread ceremony. Do we have an official bread taster?" Evan's hand shot up. "Me?" "Excellent," Lily said, selecting a piece and passing it to him with mock reverence. "Your duties, sir." Evan inspected the slice seriously, then took a bite. "Approved?" Lucas couldn't help it. He laughed. The sound surprised even him. A real laugh, low and warm, the kind that hadn't escaped his chest in months. Lily turned to him with a smile still tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I take it we're safe to proceed with dinner?" Lucas nodded. "As long as the breadmaster approves?" we're in the clear. They all took a piece, and for a moment, the table felt less like a blind date and more like something else entirely. Not quite a family, but something gentler than strangers. Professor Evan, as herself shred butter across her slice. Do you think dinosaurs would have liked restaurants? He chewed thoughtfully. Maybe. But only if they had meat. No vegan dinos then, she teased. Except for Stegosaurus, Evan said, and Triceratops. Lily laughed. All right, you're the expert. What about dragons? Did they eat steak? Evan gave her a look of patient disappointment. Dragons aren't real. Lily gasped. You mean to tell me I've been believing in imaginary fire-breathing reptiles all this time? Evan shrugged. They're fun, but they're fiction. Lucas leaned back, just watching Lily joke with his son like it was the most natural thing in the world. Watching Evan giggle and swing his feet beneath the table. Watching how she never once glanced around for someone more important. She was here, fully present, with them. Lily finally turned to Lucas, wiping her hands delicately with the cloth napkin. So, finance? Lucas nodded slowly. Yes, mostly numbers and boardrooms, spreadsheets, projections. Sounds complicated. Sometimes. Mostly just endless meetings and coffee. Lily tilted her head. But you still find time to do this, to be here. Lucas glanced at Evan. It's not optional, he comes first. She smiled at that, a small, genuine thing. That's a good answer. Work, he asked, curious. 2 jobs, Lily said, her tone light but her eyes tired. Waitressing mostly, and a few freelance shifts designing flyers for local businesses. You're a designer? Working on it, she said. Taking night classes when I can afford it. I'm about a year away from finishing my degree, if I can keep up. Lucas studied her for a second, but she didn't shrink from his gaze. Why design? I like solving puzzles, she said, making something beautiful that also communicates something real. That, and I love color. I know that sounds silly. Didn't use, doesn't, Lucas said quietly. Evan piped up, mouth half full of bread. She should design dinosaur books. Lily laughed. Only if you'll write the facts. You'd be the real author. Evan's eyes sparkled. We'd be a team. Lucas's chest tightened again. That word. Team. The waiter came back to take their order. Lucas nodded to Lily to go first. She hesitated, eyes scanning the page again. I'll have the penne arrabbiata, please. The waiter wrote it down without flinching, though it was the cheapest option on the menu. Lucas ordered the pasta Evan liked and asked for water for both of them. He could have insisted on wine, could have pushed the chef's special, but something told him not to, not tonight, not with her. When the waiter walked away, Lily turned to Evan again. So, what else do you draw, besides dinosaurs? Dragons, robots, and sometimes Dad. She raised an eyebrow. Really? What's your favorite part to draw? Evan thought about it. His hair, it's spiky in the morning. Lily laughed. You're a brave artist. Lucas smirked. That's classified information. Evan leaned in and cupped a hand around his mouth. Dad can't cook. Lily feigned shock. Is that so? Even grilled cheese, Evan added. Grilled cheese is harder than it looks, Lucas defended. That's true, Lily nodded. I'm personally great at burning toast. It's my signature dish. They all chuckled, and the laughter wasn't forced. It simply happened, filling the spaces where awkwardness should have lived. Lucas found himself easing into it, surprised by how easy everything felt. Surprised by how he didn't want the moment to end. Lily glanced toward the window, watching the city lights blink against the glass. This wasn't what I expected tonight. Lucas asked gently, good, unexpected, or bad? She smiled. Surprisingly good. I thought I'd be sitting across from someone boring, or worse, someone full of himself. Lucas grinned. Guilty on some days. I don't know, she said, turning back. You seem normal. Lucas raised a brow. Normal? She blushed, in a good way. He nodded. I'll take it. There was a pause, not uncomfortable but full, like air between notes in a song. You know, Lily said quietly, I almost didn't come. I was so tired, and blind dates have a terrible track record. Roommate begged me, and I figured, what's the worst that could happen? Now. She looked at Evan, who was now drawing a T-Rex on the back of his menu with intense focus. I think this might have been the best thing that happened all week. Luca's throat tightened. She still didn't know. She had no idea she was never meant for this table, that she had wandered into something not designed for her, but somehow made it better just by being herself. He glanced again at Evan. The boy was humming softly under his breath as he sketched, utterly content. Lucas had expected resistance, silence, maybe even a tantrum. Instead, Evan had opened up to this woman faster than anyone in recent memory. The pressure of the secret pressed harder on Lucas's ribs. He hadn't lied exactly, but the omission was growing heavier with every passing minute. He reached for his glass, trying to quiet the hum in his chest. Lily was too genuine, too honest. How would she feel when she found out this dinner began as a test? That the seat across from him was meant for someone else? He didn't know. But he knew one thing for certain. He didn't want the night to end. Not yet. Not when something about her, felt like it had only just begun. The last crumbs of lemon tart sat on the shared plate, and Evan tapped his spoon like a tiny conductor finishing a concert. Lily leaned back, her cheeks warm from laughter, her stomach full, her heart oddly light. She reached instinctively into her purse. Let me cover mine, she said softly, fingers brushing over the edge of her wallet. You've already done more than enough. Lucas lifted a hand gently, stopping her. Please, he said. My treat. I asked you to dinner, remember? Her smile faltered just slightly. Are you sure? Positive, Lucas said. It's not about the bill, it's about the company. Lily hesitated for a moment longer, then nodded. Thank you. It really was lovely. Beside them, Evan was carefully folding his dinosaur drawing, sliding it into his coat pocket with the solemnity of a scientist securing an artifact. As they stepped out into the night, a soft breeze chased the warm restaurant air away. The sidewalks shimmered with the remains of a recent drizzle, and the streetlights glowed like lanterns through the mist. Should we call a cab? Lucas asked. Lily shook her head. I'm just a few stops away. I'll take the subway. Evan tugged at his father's sleeve. Can we walk her to the station? It's dark. Lucas smiled at the request, his eyes flicking to Lily. Would that be all right? She looked between them, the way Evan stood a little taller like a miniature guardian. Her chest warmed. I'd love that. The three of them began walking, their steps unhurried. Evan skipped ahead at times, then fell back to hold Lily's hand. She let him, surprised by how natural it felt. Lucas kept pace beside her, his coat brushing hers now and then. He likes you. Lily looked over, surprised. I like him too. And she doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly. Special, Lily said. You can tell. Smart, kind, curious. Lucas's expression softened. He's my whole world. There was a moment of quiet as the city pulsed around them. Cars humming by, neon signs flickering, voices echoing from bars and bodegas. But inside their little triangle of movement, it was calm. You're a good father, Lily said gently. Lucas glanced sideways. I try. It's not always easy. Imogen not, she said, especially doing it alone. He nodded but said nothing else. The streetlights blurred slightly in his eyes. As they reached the subway steps, Lily slowed, pulling her coat tighter around her. Evan looked up at her, his drawing clutched in both hands like a shield and a gift all at once. Thank you, Lily said, meeting Lucas's eyes, for dinner. And for letting me share your table. Lucas started to speak, but she cut in, chuckling softly. I'm still amazed the hostess got it right. He tilted his head. What do you mean? Well, Lily said, I didn't even know the guy's name. My roommate set everything up. I just told the hostess I was here for a blind date and she waved me over. Lucas's breath caught. She smiled, oblivious. I figured she knew what she was doing. I mean, your table was the only one by the window. It just felt right. Lucas stared at her, the truth dawning like lightning in his chest. She didn't know. She had never known. She thought this was fate or a helpful hostess. And something about that. Something about her innocence, her joy, made him not want to correct it. Not yet. Not tonight. The train rumbled in the distance, its lights casting long shadows across the damp platform entrance. Lily bent down toward Evan, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Thank you for sharing your art with me, Professor. He beamed, pulling out the folded drawing. This is for you. Her hands stilled. Are you sure? He nodded solemnly. So, you won't forget? She took the paper gently, pressing it to her chest. I'll keep it safe. Lucas stepped forward, unsure what to say. 100 thoughts tangled behind his lips. Confessions, invitations, questions he hadn't dared voice. But all he managed was, thank you, for tonight. Lily smiled. I should be thanking you. The train screeched closer. She looked at Evan, then back at Lucas. Maybe we'll run into each other again, sometime. Lucas nodded slowly. I'd like that. Then she was gone, disappearing down the steps with a final wave. Her blue dress fluttered behind her like a fading promise. Lucas and Evan stood on the sidewalk, the distant glow of the train vanishing into the tunnel. Evan slipped his hand into his father's. Dad, he said softly, you don't have to test her anymore. Lucas blinked. Sort of life, Evan added. She already passed. The words clung to the night air like a quiet verdict. At home, Lucas carried Evan through the elevator lobby and into the penthouse. The boy clutched a small, plastic dinosaur in one hand and a smile in the other. Lucas tucked him into bed beneath navy sheets dotted with constellation. Evan mumbled through half-closed eyes, Will she come back? Lucas smoothed the blanket over his chest. Would you like her to? Evan nodded. She's nice and funny. She talked to me first. Lucas's throat tightened. She saw me, Evan whispered. No, Lucas said quietly. She saw me too. Evan drifted off with a sigh, and Lucas sat at the edge of the bed, watching him breathe. His chest ached, not with confusion, but with clarity. He hadn't planned this, hadn't expected a stranger to crash through his defenses with bread jokes and dragon talk. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the sleeping city. Somewhere down there, Lily's train rattled north. Somewhere, she was holding that crayon drawing to her chest, the same way he now held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, this mistake was exactly what he'd needed all along. Across town, Lily sat pressed into the worn vinyl seat of the subway car, the drawing resting on her lap. She traced Evan's uneven lines with her finger. 3 figures, one tall labeled Dad, one smaller labeled Me, and one in a blue dress labeled Miss L. Above them, a yellow sun beamed down with an impossibly large smile. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket, a message from Kara. So, was he awful? Lily stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed, Long story. Tell you everything when I get home. Another ping. OMG, just give me a hint. Lily smiled and typed, It was wonderful, but complicated. She hit send before she could change her mind, then leaned her head against the window, watching the blurred lights of the city streak past. And in the stillness of the night, as the train rocked and the wheels hummed, Lily and Lucas lay in separate rooms, hearts full of things they hadn't said, wondering what might come next, and whether this accidental evening might become something far more intentional. The breakfast rush at Maple Street Diner had barely ended when Lily's manager slid an envelope across the counter with a raised eyebrow. Special delivery for you, Thompson. Real fancy. Lily wiped her hands on a towel, confused. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, her name written in elegant black ink. She picked it up carefully, the paper heavier than anything she was used to holding. Her stomach fluttered. No return address, no logo, just her name, Lily Thompson. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside, on a folded sheet of personal stationery, was a handwritten message in deep blue ink. It read, "Dear Lily, Evan and I are attending a children's art initiative this Saturday morning at the Riverstone Museum. It's public, family-friendly, and full of color. Evan asked if you'd come. I hope you'll consider it." Beneath his signature, in a smaller, slightly crooked line, was a postscript. "Evan hopes you'll bring your dragon sketch." Lily's breath caught. Lucas, the man in the gray sweater, the one who made her laugh over bread baskets and spoke gently to his son like every word mattered. She turned the envelope over, noticing for the first time the embossed emblem at the top of the page, Hale Industries. Her hands stilled. Lucas Hale. The name echoed through her brain like a bell. She'd heard it before. Magazine articles, business headlines, corporate mergers, real estate empires. He wasn't just wealthy, he was one of those billionaires, the kind with buildings named after them, the kind who didn't just sit by windows at quiet restaurants unless they were trying not to be recognized. Her heart began to pound. She folded the letter again, carefully, as though it might crumble under her breath. He hadn't lied, but he hadn't told her the truth either, not really. Finance, he'd said, numbers and boardrooms. And here she was, thinking she'd had dinner with someone barely scraping upper middle class. No cufflinks, no designer watch, just soft eyes and a warm laugh. And Evan, sweet, dinosaur-loving Evan. She pressed her hand to her chest. The feelings were still real, weren't they? "Hey," her coworker called from the coffee station. "You okay?" Lily tucked the letter into her apron pocket, forcing a breath through her lips. She said quietly, "I think I am." All day, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Not the money, not the title, but the fact that he hadn't mentioned either. That he'd sat across from her for 2 hours and never once used his last name. Had it been a test, an omission, or something more human, something scared? She didn't have the answer. But she knew one thing. She was going to that exhibit. And Evan was getting his dragon. Lucas stared at the sealed envelope on his desk, his name embossed in metallic ink on the flap. He turned it over in his hands for the 4th time, frowning. Across from him, Mason waited with practiced patience. She paused a brief second. "You're sure it's discreet?" Lucas asked. Mason nodded. "Courier directly. No Hale branding, no mention of title or company, unless she turns the envelope over and looks very closely." Lucas exhaled. "Good." Mason tilted his head. "Sir, may I ask?" "She was never supposed to sit at that table," Lucas said quietly. "And yet, she did, and it felt more real than anything I've had in a long time." Mason didn't reply. Lucas rubbed a hand over his jaw. "I just want her to come without feeling like she's stepping into some power dynamic. I want her to meet the man, not the name." Lucas nodded. "Exactly." Mason picked up the envelope. "Then you already did the right thing." After the assistant left, Lucas sat back in his chair and stared out the office windows. The skyline gleamed, its towers a symbol of everything he'd built, but none of it felt as solid as that moment when Lily had leaned over the table and asked Evan if dragons liked steak. He just wanted to see her again, and not behind layers of wealth or expectation, just as she was. At her apartment that night, Lily laid out her colored pencils across the narrow kitchen table. The letter sat propped nearby, Evan's postscript underlined in her mind. She hadn't drawn like this in months. For herself. Not for joy. With a fresh sheet of cardstock in front of her, she sketched the outline of a dragon in mid-sheet, its wings arched like sails against the wind. She imagined it wrapping its tail around a tiny dinosaur, protecting it the way she imagined Evan clutched his Spinosaurus. She gave it scales, curved talons, and a small smile just beneath its snout. Then she shaded the background in rich reds and warm golds. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And it was hers. She worked long past midnight, the apartment silent except for the gentle scratch of pencil on paper. When it was finished, she stepped back and blinked against tiredness. The dragon glowed under the kitchen light, fierce and strangely tender. She folded it carefully, slipping it into her canvas tote. And for the first time in a very long time, Lily felt like an artist again. Not a waitress, not a blind date gone sideways. Just a girl with a pencil and a feeling worth chasing. Saturday was only a breath away. And maybe, just maybe, so was something real. The morning air carried the first hint of spring as Lily stepped off the bus, clutching her canvas tote to her side. Just 3 blocks ahead stood the grand arch of the Riverstone Museum. Banners fluttered overhead, announcing the Children's Art Initiative in bright blues and yellows. Creativity that heals. She pulled her coat tighter against the breeze and felt the weight of her sketch tucked inside. Her dragon for Evan, carefully folded between 2 sheets of cardboard. Her nerves tumbled, part excitement, part hesitation. What if it had all been a fluke? What if she didn't belong? The moment she passed through the front gates, that uncertainty vanished. Seat lower. Evan's voice rang out like a bell across the courtyard. He came running at full speed, coat flapping like a cape, sneakers thudding against the pavement. She laughed, crouching just in time to catch him in a quick hug. "If you came," he said breathlessly. "I told you I wouldn't miss it," she replied, "and I brought something for you." She opened her tote and pulled out the dragon drawing, wrapped neatly and sealed with a paperclip. Evan peeled it open with reverent fingers, eyes widening as the red dragon unfurled its wings on the page, wrapped protectively around a tiny green dinosaur. "This is epic," he whispered. Lucas approached slowly from behind, watching the moment unfold. His eyes lingered on Lily, not the dress or the drawing, but the way she looked at his son, like Evan was a masterpiece himself. "Morning," Lucas said, voice warm. Lily straightened, trying not to stare at how good he looked in his navy peacoat and jeans, relaxed but unmistakably put together. "Morning," she said back, smiling gently. "Shall we?" he offered, gesturing toward the museum doors. They walked side by side, the lobby bustling with families and volunteers. Evan darted ahead to a bead-making station, leaving them a few steps behind, walking slowly between marble columns and soft, natural light. Lucas cleared his throat. "I owe you the truth?" Lily glanced up. His expression was careful, as though weighing every word. "Tony, I'm not just in finance," he said quietly. "I run Hale Industries." I figured," she replied softly. "The envelope, the name." He nodded. "But it's more than that." He stopped near a sculpture alcove, and she followed, arms crossed loosely. "We met," he said. "It wasn't supposed to be you. I'd arranged a blind date through someone I trusted. I wanted to meet someone who'd talk to Evan like he mattered. Not to impress me, not for the last name." Lily's lips parted, but she didn't speak. "You sat down," Lucas continued. "I thought it was part of the setup, but you weren't. You didn't know who I was. You didn't even blink at Evan being there. You just smiled." She looked away, swallowing a knot in her throat. "It was a test?" He flinched slightly. "At first, yes." He met her eyes. "Now it feels like the test was mine. And I failed until you sat down." She stood in silence for a beat. "Lucas," she said gently, "if you want something real, you can't start with a lie. People aren't puzzles to solve. You don't test your way into connection." He nodded. "You're right. You changed everything the moment you sat down." The tension melted just slightly, and Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Let's find Evan," she said softly. They found Evan near the stage where the children's art auction was about to begin. Colorful easels displayed artwork donated by young artists and local professionals. Paintings, crayon masterpieces, even collages made of dried leaves and glitter. Evan clutched his paddle like a treasure, eyes wide with anticipation. "You ready, Professor?" Lily asked. He nodded solemnly. "I'm going to bid on something really cool." Lucas smiled, crouching to his level. "Remember, We're looking for something that speaks to you. The auctioneer took the stage, adjusting the microphone and welcoming the crowd. Light applause rippled through the hall as the first piece was unveiled, a watercolor sunset painted by a 7-year-old cancer survivor. Soft swirls of orange and purple melted across the canvas. Evan raised his paddle instantly. Lily leaned down. Maybe wait until we hear the price, yeah? He giggled, tucking the paddle against his chest. Lot by lot, the pieces rotated in and out, some colorful, some chaotic, all full of heart. Bids came from parents, donors, volunteers. The crowd laughed when a piece titled "My Pet Rock" went for over $200. Then came a crayon landscape, bright stars streaking across a sky over a red-roofed cottage. It was signed Jada, age 9. Evan pointed. That one. Lucas lifted the paddle once. Another hand raised across the aisle. He lifted it again. The gavel came down with a soft ding, and cheers erupted. Evan bounced on the balls of his feet. Won it. You sure did, Lily said. Great choice. As they collected the framed drawing, Evan turned it over and signed the back with bold, blocky letters. Professor Evan. He handed the marker to Lily. Your turn, he said. She hesitated. But I didn't. In your ears. You helped, he insisted. You made the dragon. Lucas watched her take the marker and scrawl her name beside Evan's, her cheeks slightly pink. As they walked through the next exhibit hall, filled with student sculptures and papier-mâché animals, Lucas leaned close to her. You're part of his happiness now, he said quietly. Lily blinked. What? Whether this, he gestured softly between them, goes anywhere or not, you are. The words settled between them like something fragile but true. I didn't expect this, she said, any of this. Neither did I, he replied, but I'm glad it happened. She looked ahead at Evan, who was now building a wobbly tower out of foam blocks at a kid's corner. His laughter echoed through the gallery. Feels good. I really feel good. Lucas nodded. It does. They stood in silence, both of them watching Evan. For the first time in a long while, Lucas didn't feel the pressure of being anyone but himself. And for Lily, the ache of pretending to belong had been replaced with something simpler, being wanted for exactly who she was. Later, as they wandered past the last display, Evan trotted back to them with a red balloon tied to his wrist and glitter stuck in his hair. I'm hungry, he announced. Lucas turned to Lily with a hopeful look. She grinned. Only if we fold the slices dino style. Evan threw his arms up. Yes. As they stepped out of the museum into the soft glow of a Saturday afternoon, Lily glanced down at the dragon drawing still tucked in her bag, then up at the man walking beside her. No more secrets. Just possibility. Lily was wiping down the counter at the diner just after the lunch rush, when her manager returned from the back office, waving another envelope. Another fancy letter for you, Thompson, he said. You sure you're not secretly royalty? Lily dried her hands on a towel and took it cautiously. It was slimmer than the first, but the same elegant cream color. Her name was written in the same clean script, and her stomach flipped before she even opened it. Inside was a single page, this time typed on Hale Industries letterhead. The words were brief, direct, and somehow still warm. We'd like to offer you a part-time design position with our new children's initiative. No strings, no pressure, just a chance to let your talent breathe. Lucas. Beneath it, in handwriting, was one more line. Evan thinks the dragons need logos. Lily's lips parted in stunned silence. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the letter and tucked it into her apron pocket. Behind the counter, her heart began to beat faster, not from nerves, but from hope. Real hope. A job that used her talent, a space where her ideas could live beyond sketchbooks and stolen hours after midnight. That night, she showed Kara the letter. Her roommate squealed so loud she nearly dropped her mug. Real design job, Liz. Not a diner flyer, not a rush tattoo mock-up for your cousin. This is it. Lily tried to smile, still unsure if she was dreaming. It's just part-time. Kara arched a brow. It's a door, kick it open. 3 days later, Lily stepped into Greystone Tower for the first time, heart thudding in her chest. The lobby sparkled with polished stone and high glass walls. A receptionist handed her a visitor badge, and, within minutes, Mason, Lucas's assistant, greeted her with a kind smile. "Where?" he said. "Your studio's ready." They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 30th floor, Lily was led down a corridor of frosted glass doors and open meeting spaces, all humming with quiet energy. He opened one door near the end of the hall. Here, it was perfect. The room was filled with soft light, thanks to a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the skyline. A fresh drafting table stood in the center, beside a top-of-the-line monitor and an ergonomic chair. On one side, shelves stood empty, waiting for her to fill them. "For me?" Lily asked, still standing in the doorway. Mason smiled. "It's your sandbox. Mr. Hale will join you after his board call." Lily stepped inside slowly, fingers trailing over the smooth wood of the desk. She'd spent years drawing on chipped counters and diner napkins. Now, here she was, in a space built for her work. A junior designer popped in a few minutes later, grinning. "You're Lily, right? We've been so excited to meet you. The kids program is seriously the best project we've had in a while." They chatted briefly about style boards and themes. Then someone else joined in, complimenting Lily's dragon sketch that had been passed around. Everything felt good. Until it didn't. It was just past noon when a small group of marketing staff passed the studio door. Their voices were low, but the hallway echoed just enough for Lily to hear. "Did you hear she was the test subject?" a woman said. "You mean that test? Like the waitress who sat at his table by accident?" Seymour laughed. "Classic Lucas Hale move. Put the kid in the spotlight and see if she melts. Bet she doesn't last the month. Poor girl probably thinks it's love." The voices faded, but the words clung. Test subject, waitress, pop quiz. Lily's face flushed with heat. She stepped back from the desk, heart pounding, the letter in her apron pocket suddenly feeling like a trick folded in ink. It hadn't just been between them. People knew. They had talked about her, studied her, judged her like she was part of some social experiment. Would the waitress pass the test? The air in the studio grew thinner. Lily pressed her fingers to the edge of the table to steady herself. She hadn't asked for this job. She hadn't asked for this man, and yet she had let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was being seen for who she was, not what she represented. When Lucas finally appeared in the doorway 10 minutes later, his smile lit up the space. "Sorry I kept you waiting," he said, stepping in. "Did you find everything all right?" Lily turned slowly, her arms crossed over her chest, not defensive, just bracing. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. Lucas paused. "Of course." She lifted her chin, her voice steady but sharp. "How many of your employees know about the test, Lucas?" He stilled. "Because it seems to be a hallway joke," she said. "The waitress, the pop quiz, the woman who didn't know she was being measured." His expression shifted from confused to horrified. "Lily, no, that wasn't—" "Notice she cut in. "You don't get to study me under glass and decide if I'm authentic enough for your world." "What they did," she said, the edge of her voice trembling. "And they learned it from somewhere." Lucas stepped closer, hands lifted. "Give me time. I can fix this. I'll shut it down." "You can't fix the fact that it started." Her words were quiet, but they cut clean. "I care about you," she said, voice cracking slightly. "I care about Evan, but I won't build a future where I'm constantly wondering if people are watching to see if I fail." Lucas's mouth opened, but no words came. "Space," Lily said. She walked past him, past the bright shelves and the empty walls, past the elevator that hummed too loudly in the silence. She didn't cry, not yet. Not until she reached the sidewalk and the cold air bit at her cheeks like truth. Upstairs, Lucas stood alone in the studio, staring at the desk she hadn't even had time to sit at. He sat down slowly, placing both hands on the surface. And for the first time in a long time, he felt small. He hadn't tested her heart, but he had underestimated its depth. Evan noticed before Lucas did. It was Friday evening, and the apartment smelled faintly of takeout and dryer sheets. Lucas had just set the table, 3 plates out of habit. Evan came in from his room carrying a handful of markers and paused when he saw the empty 3rd chair. "Where's Miss Lily?" Lucas froze, fingers still adjusting the napkin by her unused place setting. Evan frowned. "She didn't say that last time." Lucas cleared his throat, trying to sound casual. Sometimes grown-ups need space. Evan didn't respond. He set his markers down and returned a few minutes later with a folded piece of paper. He held it out silently. Lucas took it, expecting another drawing of a dinosaur. Instead, he found a red dragon, carefully shaded in crayon, wings spread protectively across the top of the page. Below it, in block letters, Evan had written, "Dear Miss Lily, you are really real. Don't let adult stuff make you sad. Come back soon. Love, Professor Evan." Lucas read it once, then again, his throat tightened. Later, after Evan was asleep, Lucas sat in the living room, the letter open in his lap, his hands unmoving. The dragon stared up at him, bold and unafraid. He thought of Lily's face the last time he saw her, calm, but wounded, not angry, just disappointed. Her words echoed, "You can't fix the fact it started." And she had been right. He hadn't protected her. Not from gossip, not from assumptions, not from the narrative that others were spinning around her without her consent. He thought wealth meant control, but real connection didn't need a script. It needed truth, humility, a willingness to be seen, not just admired. Lily had walked into his life by accident and changed it without trying. Now she was gone. He stood abruptly, grabbing his coat. The letter still clutched in his hand, he stepped into the hallway and into the elevator before the doubt could catch up to him. It was just after 5 in the morning when the familiar pink glow of the Maple Street diner sign came into view. The city was still stretching awake. The sidewalks were damp from early dew, and the scent of coffee drifted faintly through the air. Lucas pushed the door open, the bell above it chiming softly. Inside, Lily stood behind the counter, arranging napkin dispensers, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. She glanced up, startled, her shoulders tensed, then steadied. "100 cow," she said carefully. He took a slow step forward. No suit, no entourage, just jeans, a worn sweater, and the letter in his hand. "Your shift ends at 3, right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Can I have 10 minutes after?" She studied him for a moment, unsure. Then, quietly, she said, 10 minutes. Time moved painfully slow. Lucas sat in the far booth of the diner, nursing a black coffee that had long gone cold. He watched Lily through the counter window as she moved through her shift, refilling mugs, scribbling orders, avoiding his gaze. At 3:05, she walked out from behind the counter, untied her apron, and slid into the booth across from him. Her arms folded, her eyes were guarded. He placed Evan's letter on the table and slid it toward her. "If you wanted you to have this." She unfolded it slowly, reading each word like a fragile truth. Her fingers brushed over the crayon lines of the dragon, and her lips trembled just slightly. Silence stretched between them. Lucas broke it first. "I'm sorry," he said. She looked up. "For being wealthy," he clarified. "For believing that wealth gave me the right to skip honesty. For thinking I could control the way people saw you, or saw us." Lily didn't respond, not yet. "Wanted to protect Evan," he continued, "but I ended up hurting you. I didn't shut it down fast enough. I didn't make it clear that what happened between us wasn't a game." She lowered the letter. "You made me feel like an experiment." "No," he said softly, "and that's what I regret most." He leaned forward, voice rough now, raw. "Billy, you'll always be Lily, the woman who talked to my son first, who didn't blink when she saw him at the table, who made him laugh, and me, breathed. Her eyes glistened. I didn't want perfection. I just wanted truth. No, he whispered. No more tests, no more silence, just truth. From now on? She looked down again at the drawing. Her thumb ran over Evan's blocky letters. For a moment, all the walls she'd built flickered like shadows at dusk. Care about him, she said. Lucas nodded. He cares about you. He made that dragon for you. She smiled faintly. No, he made the first one. I made this one. Lucas blinked. You? What? I made the dragon, she repeated, lifting the page. The first night we met, I promised Evan I'd draw him a dragon. This is it. Lucas stared at her, breath caught in his chest. She set the letter down. I'll stay, but only if there are no more secrets. He nodded, the relief palpable across his face. Deal. They sat quietly, the hum of the diner surrounding them, the weight of misunderstanding easing just enough to make space for something softer. She looked at him, really looked, and found a man who wasn't trying to impress her anymore, just a man who wanted to be better. Still don't like your coffee, she teased. He laughed, full and real. I'll work on that. Outside, a breeze stirred the sidewalk trees, and the early afternoon sun split the clouds like a second chance. As they stepped out together, side by side, there were no titles between them, no spotlights, no masks. Just the woman who had drawn a dragon, the man who finally stopped hiding, and a boy waiting at home with crayons in hand, hoping love was brave enough to come back. The school doors flung open, with the usual chaos of backpacks, lunchboxes, and the bounce of sneakers on concrete. Lucas stood off to the side of the crowd, scanning faces. Then he saw Evan, weaving between students, a red folder clutched to his chest. Before Lucas could call his name, Evan spotted someone else. Lily stepped from behind a nearby tree, her smile blooming before she could speak. Evan charged toward her like a rocket, wrapping his arms around her waist. A few came, he said breathlessly. I promised, didn't I? She said, hugging him back. He pulled away slightly, beaming up at her. I missed you. A lot. I missed you too, Professor, she said, crouching to meet his eyes. And guess what? I've been studying. I can now name 15 different dinosaur species. Evan's mouth dropped open in pure, delighted disbelief. Wait. Name 3. Okay. Therizinosaurus, Ankylosaurus, and Pachycephalosaurus. He shrieked with joy. You said them all right. Lucas walked up just in time to hear the last one, a quiet smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Lily stood and met his gaze, the awkwardness from the past week replaced by something tentative but steady. Shh, she asked. Evan threw both arms into the air. Yes, Dino style. They walked the few blocks together, Evan chattering the whole way about fossils, meteor theories, and his plan to build a dinosaur museum with a snack bar. By the time they reached the pizza place, a cozy corner joint that smelled like toasted dough and oregano, they were all laughing. The hostess seated them at a booth by the window. Lucas and Evan on one side, Lily on the other. The waiter came by and Evan ordered confidently. One large thin crust, half cheese, half pepperoni, and garlic knots? Lily raised an eyebrow. You've done this before. He nodded. I'm a professional. When the food arrived, Evan demonstrated the proper way to fold a slice. Like this, he said, carefully bending the crust in the middle. It makes it easier to chomp, and that's how real dino experts eat. Lily followed his lead, folding her slice exactly as instructed. Cheddar grease on your nose, Lucas said softly, pointing. She wiped it, laughing. Better than glitter in my hair. You've had that too, he teased. They ate, talked, and shared small moments that felt big in the way only quiet things can. The laughter didn't feel rehearsed, the silences weren't heavy. Every interaction carried the rhythm of something honest, something becoming whole. Evan began to slow by the final slice, eyelids dipping slightly as he leaned against his father's side. Lucas gently brushed a crumb from the boy's cheek. Out like a light in 10 minutes. Lily smiled. That's what pizza does to dinosaurs. As they gathered their things, Evan sleepily clutched his red folder, mumbling something about flying reptiles. Lucas carried him to the car, and Lily walked alongside them, her fingers grazing the hem of her coat, feeling the steady weight of something real beginning to form. Monday morning arrived with soft sunlight and the scent of fresh beginnings. Lily stood in the Greystone Tower lobby again, but this time without nerves in her stomach, no shame in her chest, no fear in her step, only a quiet focus. Mason greeted her with a grin as the elevator doors slid open. "Good to have you back," he said. "Good to be back," she replied. The elevator climbed steadily, and when it opened on the 30th floor, the design wing felt different. Brighter somehow. Staff she'd met before nodded with genuine smiles, a few offering compliments on her dragon sketch that now hung, framed, near the kids' gallery wall. There were no sideways glances, no just respect. She stepped into her studio and stood at the drafting table for a long moment. The light poured through the tall windows, touching the fresh sketch pads and neatly lined up pencils like a blessing. She hung her coat and settled in, pulling out her notebook and opening a blank page. A quiet knock came from the doorway. Lucas stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Be tests," he said simply, setting one down beside her. "Just trust." Lily turned in her chair to face him. "How do you take your coffee again?" "Strong, no sugar, just like my life lessons." She laughed, taking a sip. "I'll add cream to mine, just like my expectations." He leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, watching her. "You good?" "What?" she said. "Really good." "Proud of you," he said, his voice quieter now. "Not for coming back, but for walking away when it mattered. You reminded me that honesty isn't a luxury, it's a foundation." Lily's eyes softened. "And you reminded me that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's a choice." They stood in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. "Let you work," he said finally. "Wait," she called as he turned. "I'm thinking of giving Evan his own section in the campaign. A comic strip. Professor Evan's Dino Corner." Lucas's smile spread slowly. "He's going to lose his mind." "Then we better get to work," she said, grinning. He left the room, and she turned back to her table, fingers flying across the page as she began to sketch a tiny character with glasses, a pencil behind his ear, and a big red dragon for a sidekick. Outside the windows, spring blossoms drifted from the trees below, swirling in the breeze like confetti. The city stretched toward summer, full of noise and light and uncertainty. But in one quiet room on the 30th floor, hope had found a home again. No spotlight, no scorecards, just a woman, a man, and a boy with a dragon drawing something real from the inside out. And somewhere in that new beginning, love quietly unfolded its wings.